And when you came, dude, Phil Sauer hated me. He hated me so much because he's like, you're like his protege, you know? And so then we had this like feud, okay? It was like we were the two biggest. There were so many martial arts programs on that campus. It's kind of crazy. I think people don't realize there's probably like 15 or 16 martial arts programs on the campus, and we were the two biggest ones, right? Yours was kind of the original one, and mine was kind of this like young upstart that was kind of rising up like this. And Phil Sauer used all his connections to try to knock us down as far down as we could go, like preventing us from renting rooms and stuff like that. And it really felt like, I mean, it probably would never happen, but it felt like there was going to be like this showdown somewhere on campus between our two factions, and we were going to have this awesome rumble. Let's get started, and maybe Trevor will jump in and I can introduce him at that time. But
sure.
Sensei Kopish, so excited to have you on the show. How have you been?
Well, when was the last time I saw you?
I think it's been like 15 years. It's been a long time.
No. Had to be.
I left.
Maybe
that's an exaggeration because I did come back, but I left for Korea in 2009.
Oh, well then I was going to say, I thought it was like around 2010.
Yeah. Okay. 15 years is too much, but I think it's maybe 8 or 9.
A decade.
10 years.
Yeah, close to a decade.
It's crazy how time flies, huh?
It is. It absolutely is.
And the genie has come out of the bottle. We have Trevor Holt here, my younger brother. I don't know if you remember him.
Mr. Kopish, nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Mr. Olds.
Dude,
congratulations on the black belt.
Mustache, that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Hopefully one day I will have something as magnificent as that.
Well,
sorry, but I interrupted something.
You've got the mane going, the lion's mane going.
It's yeah. Well, you know, it will get there eventually, but it's the quarantine chic, as I like to say. Right.
Yeah,
nice.
I feel like I'm kind of trembling with my masculinity here because you guys are so openly accent. I used to have a beard, and now I've shaved it all off because my wife, you know, she doesn't like the beard. But you guys rock.
That's when you lean in, Master Olds. That's when you lean in. When they're like, Matt, and he's like, no, I'm leaning in on this one.
Yeah.
To be fair, everyone I know is like, when are you shaving it off? So I don't think you're doing too bad, sir.
Yeah. I don't know if you could beat Sensei Kopish's beard. I mean, with the curly Q mustache.
No, I don't think mine will ever look that good. Mine will always look kind of scruggly and.
Yeah. Do you wax?
I'm going for the, like, I want it to be more Viking-esque down here. I wear this pendant that I bought. And it's a lion's mane, and it is what I shape my beard after because I don't have the top part, so I just get the bottom. My girlfriend hates this. I wear it all the time. She's not a fan of this so much, but I rock it the best I can.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it looks very nice. It looks
a lot of women like the beards these days. They're in, you know.
There you go.
So I'm actually, here's a thought I have. I think beards, I don't know if this is going to be the case, but I have a sneaking suspicion that beards are going to go out of fashion because it's going to be associated with a lack of hygiene, and hygiene in our social kind of concept is going to become really important.
Oh.
So I don't know if that's going to be the case because beards were coming back, right? Like a lot of pro athletes are starting to wear beards and stuff. So I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but that's my hunch.
Beards are no good with the masks. You know, they don't really fit inside.
Yeah.
And then it makes your beards a halo because it's pushed against your chin. So then it you know. But again, I'll gladly wear a mask to protect humanity. Like in all honesty, like I will do my part for.
The Abraham Lincoln chin strap is going to come back into fashion.
Yeah.
So you can just have it here and coming down there, or neck beards maybe.
The Mr. Poppins, as we called it.
How is he doing? Have you talked to him?
Mr. Poppins actually just reached out to me on Friday and it has been, I mean, it's had to have been close to 7, 8 years since I've seen him.
Oh.
And he lives in Waukesha, I guess. So my family's there. I said that, one of these weekends when I'm in town that we could get together for some beverages and catch up. He reached out, just wanted to catch up.
Yeah.
Always willing to, you know, reconnect with some old friends.
So let's fill in everybody, because none of my students know who you are, but you're a very important person to me and my training over the years. You know, back when I was in college, you were both a big inspiration to me with your program, your karate program, but also a big help in my Rising Phoenix Taekwondo Fellowship. And so can you tell us a little bit about your story, how you got started in martial arts, and kind of go from there?
Yeah, I started back in when I entered college back in 1992, UWM, and I had seen Karate Kid back in 1984 at a movie theater in Green Bay with my father, and something just resonated with me. I was in 4th grade. I don't come from a well-off family, so we never could afford any type of lessons. I did kind of feel like Daniel LaRusso at, like, you know, got a book, maybe take a class at the Y or something like that. But when I got to UWM, and I was taking 15 credits, and anywhere from 12 to 18 was the same financial burden on somebody. And a friend of mine's like, hey, they've got karate. And I was like, well, and it's on campus? Well, that's fantastic. I didn't have to travel to the south side or anything like that. And I took it just because it was, you know, something that I had always just wanted to experience, but was too scared of in high school. I was a really little kid in high school, bullied really badly, afraid to try anything new out of my comfort zone just because I really didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. And I always enjoyed physical activity though, and hard work. And I sort of just took a shine to it. I had a pretty good propensity for doing what was needed of me, and met Phil Sauer, and an incredible mentor, teacher, friend, father figure. He was so many different roles for me. He had seen my potential and sort of took me under his wing. And I helped him grow the classes at UWM as an undergrad, his private school, ended up meeting Tadashi Yamashita, and who was his master, and formed a pretty decent relationship with him, and garnered some respect from some of the higher ranked ones just by the hard work ethic that I had, and the kicking dummy that I did so become, because I was the young buck.
Yeah.
But from there, just worked and trained incredibly hard. And when I graduated, he gave me a teaching position at UWM before I had went off to grad school. And then after the millennium, when I was out in grad school, I came back to Wisconsin because his program was, it was stumbling a bit, shall we say, at UWM. And he's like, you know, you can come and live with me. And to get to live with your master, like when it's usually the student, you know, the students take care of the master, whatever, and the master was taking care of me, which was he had already given me so much in knowledge and time and mentoring. I thought this was like a great opportunity. And then I came back to UWM, and then I mean, I really floored it for about the next decade. And during that time is when I met you.
Yeah.
It is when my world sort of opened up a bit. Phil Sauer, like I said, he was many different relationships to me. But then coming in with a gifted younger athlete like Master Olds, we were a little bit closer in age than Phil and I were. We enjoyed the same things. There was a camaraderie there, and just the athletic ability, and then the talent from the years of training he had done. You know, I think that's where we sort of formed. We saw, you know, once we both emptied our cups, I think we really learned a lot from each other. Mm-hmm. I think there in the beginning there was battle of alpha for a little bit, like your style, my style. Karate obviously is heavily hand-based. That is my wheelhouse. That is a skill set of mine.
Yeah.
Yours, of course, is kicking 30 feet at 100 RPMs. And once we realize, like, hey, let's grow this together.
Yeah.
Let's try to make our students better than us, because I think that's the goal of any instructor. Should be never that we're the pinnacle, that we're always learning, and we can always learn from somebody else. And in the end, that's where Phil Sauer, I believe, had a problem with our relationship. Did not like that he could no longer control every aspect of what I was doing. And when we tried to do stuff that he wasn't involved in specifically, he had a really hard time with that, and thus ended my tenure with him.
Yeah.
And, and then us growing, the fellowship, which I had no better times than the fellowship, training at the churches and stuff. Like, it was phenomenal.
Yeah. It's so difficult.
I have a question.
Yep.
I have a question just kind of on behalf of our school students who don't know this story. How unique is that to have kind of a cooperative relationship between what started as two programs? Because I recognize that's quite amazing that happened, that it wasn't more confrontational. But can either of you talk about that a little bit on how unique that is?
I think it was really special. I think a lot of the credit really goes to Sensei Kopish, because he was older than me and had a lot more life experience, and I was kind of a young hotshot at that time, I think, because I had been always kind of the top of my schools as I was going up, and then I come into the karate program, and I'm not really a karate practitioner, I'm a taekwondo practitioner, but I'm sparring with them, and kind of, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I did pretty well, and I think it took a lot of maturity for Sensei Kopish to come around to seeing me as a friend and coming to work in my program with the fellowship and everything. So I've been really, I was really blessed with that. And I'm also really look up to him because he has been doing the martial arts for a long time, and he's in phenomenal shape. He's always kept himself in phenomenal shape, always pushing himself, never making age a barrier. So I think we all have a lot to learn from him, especially. But anyway, one thing I want to talk about is, have you seen Cobra Kai?
Have I seen Cobra Kai? I've seen the first two seasons. I've
Yeah.
seen the first two seasons.
Do you like it? Do you like it?
Forget it. It's fantastic.
Because
it is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And when I was watching Cobra Kai, I thought so much about you and Phil Sauer. You have a really interesting story because, like, I was my master's top student, but it never felt like you and Phil. Like, you and Phil really had the Mr. Miyagi sort of experience, where he took off his belt and he gave it to you, where you lived in his house. You were like, everyone in that program knew that you were his protege. And I've never really been in a program before that had a protege. And there's a lot of things about that program that kind of skirted on things that we imagine schools do, but they don't really do, because in the world of business, you can't really run a school that way. And I think because Phil Sauer basically, I think you were really, I'm kind of going all over the place, but I think you were really lucky to run into Phil Sauer when you did, because he was teaching a, after school program at a university. So a lot of people would kind of just say, oh, he must not be that great of an instructor. But what was really crazy about him is he was one of like these kingpins of karate in Wisconsin, who had learned directly from Tadashi Yamashita, who is, unquestionably one of the top karate practitioners of all time. And he's sort of like a movie star, like, not quite like Bruce Lee or Chuck Norris, but, kind of a B-level movie star. And so what an awesome opportunity for you, like, to have gotten in on the kind of the ground floor and to have this really like cool experience. And how hard that must have been when you guys had your falling out and all that kind of stuff, which, we can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right place, right time for me when I met him. And, he afforded me many opportunities. However, it had taken me a long time before I felt worthy enough to, and yet be humble enough to go, yes, opportunities were afforded and I had some lucky breaks and stuff, but the work that I put in, the relationships that I formed, the hard work, how I helped grow not only the school at UWM, but his private business. And like you said, it's really unique to have a relationship like this, how it was basically like the positive aspect of the Miyagi side, right? It wasn't until later on when it became, where it's more of the business ask, and the higher up you get as a black belt, it becomes more political, right?
Yes.
So, and then that's sort of where the challenges had come. But all leading up to that, the experiences that I had, it was movie-esque. It was what I had dreamt of, like from seeing the Karate Kid. Yeah. And therefore I was cognizant of putting myself into the right position though too, of going, wow, I am going to prove myself. I will do the hard work. I will do whatever is asked of me. No questions, because again, I knew nothing, and I was like, shape me, so from all the different aspects, and I'm just coming into college. So not only am I sharpening my mind, I'm sharpening my body and at the time, let's be honest, 18, 19, 20, we're boys. We are not in our prime. That is not primes, man. It took me becoming a man in my mid to late 20s where I started to really get my speed, get my strength, understand biomechanics and moving, and all under his tutelage. And as I kept growing, and then he would be very open for learning from me. And they say with rank comes privilege, but also with rank in certain schools comes abuse. People are like, well, I'm this level, so you have nothing you can give me. Phil Sauer never fostered that. He, like, whatever you could learn, I mean, he was basically a Renaissance man. I mean, the guy loved, great music, wine, food. If a student had a certain niche that he or she was great in, Phil would love to incorporate that stuff into the school and say, hey, let's bring this person. It rounds the council, So not only were we hanging out, as Master Olds, with millionaires, they were all the millionaires, all the lawyers and the doctors and all this. But when you showed that you could put in the hard work like we did, they respected that. It wasn't you were just given it. It was you did have to prove yourself. But then the respect came there, and you had to realize once you got that black belt, now you are a student. Now your journey begins. That black belt, that is when you start to actually learn, I feel, martial arts. Like spiritually, emotionally, what that really, really is. It's like you've got that physical, you've hit a standard, and now, all right, now I'm going to take you.
Yeah. I kind of want to talk a little bit about that program since we're on the topic, and about the fellowship, because it was sort of the Phoenix before the Phoenix. That was the real original Phoenix there at that university. And it was such a really cool time for me, at least in my life. And that program, that karate program, was very special. I remember, so I had done Taekwondo my whole life. And when I got to college, I was starting to teach my own students on the campus. And my girlfriend at the time had signed up for karate because she wanted to, she would always try to attack me when I wasn't looking, like kick me in the balls and all this kind of stuff. And then she's like, well, I'm going to learn karate. I'm signing up for karate. And so she did. And I remember at her first, Sensei Phil Sauer invited everyone out to Cheddar's or whatever. It was like on Downer. Is that Downer? I can't even remember anymore, but it was, it's no longer there. It was a restaurant.
Chancery.
Chancellery. That's what it was called. Yeah.
Chancery. No, yep.
And I don't really remember why, but it was kind of a social get together. And it was at that time that I met you for the very first time. I don't think you remember this because we didn't really talk very much, but that was when I first kind of met you. And my girlfriend at the time, said, hey, I'm really liking this. You want to, come try it with me. And so I signed up to do it. And eventually she kind of moved on to other things, but I actually kept staying in that program, was really loved it for many, many years. And what was so cool about that karate program was, yes, it was for college students, and there was a lot of these young buck athletes kind of in there trying to prove themselves, but it was also for these 50-year-old badasses who were like biker gang, they had this own little kind of biker gang, but they were also these wealthy sort of intellectuals. And it was such an interesting mix. And the feel of the karate program was very hardcore. We kind of grew up with these legends of when Tadashi Yamashita is going to test you for your belt, you're going to have to stand there and he's going to front kick you as hard as he can if he really likes you, We're like, okay. So it was a really, cool, hardcore experience. But it was also, very traditional. People wore uniforms, and it was kind of before, MMA had really taken off and sort of captured the imagination of everybody. And I think that was really cool. And then, there was a point where, I've been training that program for a long time because I was in college for a really long time because I was kind of trying to do my own program and go to school. And then I ended up working for one of my old masters. So trying to juggle all these things, and I was in college for a long time. And over that course of that time, I was always training in the karate program, but I also, and a lot of other programs on campus, but I was also starting my own program, Rising Phoenix Taekwondo Fellowship. And it was at a certain point where I was ready to test for my black belt in karate that I came to, Sensei Phil Sauer and asked him, can I test for my black belt? And, he said, actually, I don't think I went to him and asked him. I think he came to me and he said, Michael, if you want to get your black belt in karate, you have to dissolve your program on campus. And I was like, whoa, I'd already had it for a few years. And I was like, I can't do that. All these students are looking up to me, and, this is my time to kind of work on my theory. I think this is really important for me. And also, are you a good instructor to try to bully me into closing down my program?
Right. That made no sense. That is when I started to understand power and control and the manipulation of how certain programs can be.
Yeah. That was a real, I already knew that belts were political, and that's something I try really hard not to do in my school, but that was definitely apparent in that program. And so I was like, you know what? I can sign up for this thing without his permission. So I'm just going to keep signing up for his class and keep taking it. And eventually he's going to have to give me that black belt. And there was actually a time where, you remember Brandon Koch?
Yeah.
He was going to test for his black belt, and he came all the way back to the university. I think it was out in Colorado or something for a weekend. And we basically tested for our black belts. And at the end of it, he said, and I think it's because I was there and he decided he just didn't want to give me my black belt. He basically said, no, I'm not going to give you your black belts. And so I was like, crap, that was my one chance. I thought I was going to get my black belt at the time. I thought he eventually was going to, be big and give me my black belt, but he didn't. And then I trained for, a few more years with him, trying to desperately get it. But it was it became so difficult because he turned the whole program against me. And you had Alan, I think was his name, who was kind of the director of the Klochke Center, working.
Alan, he came back into it. He was worked for the vice chancellor, actually. He was the treasurer of UWM. He held a lot of power.
Yes. And it basically just turned the whole program against me, so that when I would go there, I just feel like I had no friends and everyone was against me. And the friends that I had basically broke off and started doing, Rising Phoenix. And you kind of came, and when you came, dude, Phil Sauer hated me. He hated me so much because he's like, you're like his protege, And so then we had this like feud. Okay. It was like, we were the two biggest. There were so many martial arts programs on that campus. It's kind of crazy. I think people don't realize there's probably like 15 or 16 martial arts programs on the campus. And we were the two biggest ones, right? Yours was kind of the original one, and mine was kind of this like young upstart that was kind of rising up like this. And Phil Sauer used all his connections to try to knock us down as far down as we could go, like preventing us from renting rooms and stuff like that. And it really felt like, I mean, it probably would never happen, but it felt like there was going to be like this showdown somewhere on campus between our two factions, and we were going to have this awesome rumble, But it was also really cool in a kind of weirdly romantic way.
What ended up happening was you were speaking to the student population. Like, you were connecting because that was, I mean, you were younger. That's what you were doing, right? Like, the reason again, early on, it was a different ball game. Early on in Key, Mind, and Body, which was his school. I don't know if he's, still doing that. He was a young buck. He was like, I don't know, he was like maybe 40 when I met him or something like that, or late 30s. I do want to say he was like probably in his early 40s. I was like, oh, so kind of like where I am right now. I was like, when I met a young, up and coming 18-year-old.
Yeah.
So, for the first almost decade, I spoke very, very closely with that student's population, right? Like, that is why a lot of people ended up taking his assault prevention, his kickboxing, his martial arts. I was doing a lot. I was integrated into it. It was another young dude who had went through the program who could back up like the validity of this program. You come along, and you're right. I remember the day that he confronted me. You were having a class in the Kalachi Center, in the mat room before Key, Mind, and Bodies, like before his actual school. And let's not even talk about like getting the monies at a university, going through, like, I don't even want to get into that political stuff, but he saw me train with you and he's like, what are you doing? I was like, what? I said, I'm not taking away any training from, going to your classes. Like, Mr. Olds has a club that meeting before, he can, he's rented this room. Your class is after. I'm coming to your class. And, I mean, that is where it started, because his class at that time, then, because it was his private school, you start speaking to, you have to pay into it, like a lot of money. And that's where the community members were coming in, and the rich people and the older people with money. He wanted of the young, because he wanted to, like, make all of, Master Old students come to mine. I'm like, no, like, you're an astronomical amount of money. Well, aren't I worth the product? Yeah, but these are 18-year-olds. Like, know your audience. Like, it became a huge thing where, I got kicked out because I decided, like, what are you doing, Phil? Master Olds is connecting, and he is bettering, and he's giving a social connection. And my God, your philosophies of how we would do readings at club, and meditations, and it was a whole different thing. It was like he saw in you what he used to be, I think. And I believe, in all honesty, he started to see his own mortality, in a sense, and a mortality of his school, that, he was like a cornered badger.
Yeah.
No. And it was really unfortunate.
Yeah, I know. I really felt bad about it, because, I mean, in some ways, I really respect Phil Sauer. And, he's a tremendous practitioner. And I've had a lot of bad falling outs with bastards over the years. I just feel like it's inevitable almost, which is really sad. But I personally have no hard feelings towards any of them. Like, I really respect Phil Sauer. I had, other things like that with some of my other instructors, unfortunately. But I don't hold any ill blood towards them. And I remember when we kind of had this falling out, and I kept trying to test for my black belt, and he kept denying me, and it became really difficult to go to his program. And I eventually said, you know, Mr. Sauer, I'd like to sit down and talk to you because it seems like there's some uncurable beef between us, and I really want to get to the bottom of it. So he's like, okay, fine. Like, let's meet at the Klotchke Center. We met like upstairs at some weird table in a random corner. And he basically just bore down on me and said, you know, all these terrible things. But the one thing I remember he said, and I was like, you know, that's kind of a compliment. He said, you know, Michael, no one has ever been able to threaten my program before, you know, and I was like, wow, I'm only 20 years old, and here I come, and I'm not, you know, at that time I wasn't even like a master, you know, I just, and so I thought it was kind of a compliment that you know, but I think that's kind of hitting what you're talking about. Like, he felt very threatened by my program, and it brought out the worst of him. And I don't really think that's who he is. I just think he was really defensive in that moment. And I can see that now that I'm older and I kind of am not such a, you know, a young hotshot, that's probably where he's coming from. But also, even at that time, I knew that was where he was coming from, but he was kind of inconsolable. Like, I tried so hard to reach out to him and get through, but he just wouldn't. And I do think that we had something special with the fellowship because we were practicing what we preached, you know, and that really resonates with the students, you know, all of us, not, you know, I mean, you and Brian Nusslock, we had a lot of really good, like, young, passionate instructors who really believed in trying to live by the warrior code.
Right. And they all, like, I mean, you know, they gravitated. I look at Mr. Coppins, Gerbig, Nusslock, Revelinsky, right?
Yeah.
Premier, all at one point in Phil's school, okay? And then all coming over to the fellowship because it was, I truly, Phil's the greatest tactician that I've ever seen. Like, it is, well, Yamashita is, because it's Yamashita, but it's crazy how good he is. But it became, I think once he became like 8th or 9th, you know, degree black, it changes. And, you know, like, our way of living, you know, he would preach Bushido, right? But I didn't see it. I saw it too business-like, and young, passionate people, especially in a college setting, who are finding themselves and wanting an authentic connection, gravitated towards the camaraderie, the fellowship. For God's sakes, you called it the fellowship of Rising Phoenix, and that just resonated. And I believe it was literally one of the last great times for true martial arts, because traditional martial arts, as you know now, have been like overrun with MMA for so long, you know. And I adhere to the traditional martial arts. That is my favorite. That's what speaks to me. Not saying that MMA doesn't have great values and stuff like that. I've just, through media and stuff, I've just seen the commercialization of it too much. And so I geared towards, you know, Rising Phoenix, us working together. It was great that I could contribute, because in order to have a club, you needed a faculty member to sponsor the club. And it was like, well, this is perfect. Phil cannot shut down Rising Phoenix as long as I'm an instructor at UWM. So,
So I'm kind of curious, because obviously I know how important fellowship is for our school, where it came from. Can you guys talk a little bit about, we talked a little bit about kind of what made it so special, but, you know, for us, I know we've talked about some of the things that have translated really well to our new school and some of the things that have been more difficult to translate. And I'm curious, just talking about that, talking about how different that program is to the program that we want to run, where we are right now. Also for you, Master Sauer, you know, anything relating to
Master
that. Master Kopish, sorry, excuse me.
I don't want to make that mistake.
I knew what he meant. I knew what he meant.
Yeah, no, I mean, maybe I'll go first and then you can kind of add on. I think the spirit of Rising Phoenix Martial Arts started in those early days back in 2007 when it was a very different world. And because it was not a paid program, we were able to do things that I can't really get away with now. But, you know, one of my passions, one of the reasons why I started my school here in Texas and why I've kept kind of pulling that fire forward through all these years is because I want to create something different than exists right now in the martial arts. And it is a little bit more of the kind of program that I had in college, and trying to figure out how I can monetize that in a way that, you know, everyone can enjoy and I can make a living doing it, but it still feels like that program that I had back in college. So I think that's the birth of the Phoenix. That's like where the spirit of, you know, Rising Phoenix came from at that time.
And I think that's the challenge too, Master Olds, is, you know, wanting, the ultimate goal is like, you know, getting paid to do what you love, you know, but in martial arts, as we know, that is a very hard thing to do, where you like, in order to monetize and to make a living, we've seen, you know, where schools become paper belt factories.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, you have to have a children's program because that's where the money is, because that's where the parents are. And that's like feeding it in. And, you know, with UWM and being club, you had no overhead, right? We could rent a room. Like all you had to do is rent it out. Like, well, your tuition was paying for God's sakes. You were a student there. So, I mean, I guess there was, but like, you're not having to like pay the electric bill and pay this and pay that. So there wasn't as much of a dire need to like, oh my God, if I only have 5 students this semester, I'm going to close down.
Yes.
Right? Like your business, you can't, that's not sustainable. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you started with just a couple of hardcore students. And then I remember, you know, you and I just spitballing ideas, so many different things. I mean, it was such a creative time and testing things out and just organic and yet like hardcore though, you know, but like with that humanity there. And that's the thing, is like getting that authentic sense of belonging with people. And your challenge now is like, how do I monetize that? How do I run my school but still be like super authentic? And I think part of that is, you know, is showing up for your students on whatever level. You practice what you preach. You're transparent. They see it. You're there. You're not just having like Trevor run every single class and do like, you have to be invested in order for them to be invested. Yeah, you sure. know, and I think that was, you know, that was the great thing. I mean, Master Olds, how many times were we at your little apartment and we're doing like, you know, we're doing book readings, you know, and we're having some bourbons and we're talking about life, and we're, you know, the challenges once we started working out at the foundation down in my basement, mm-hmm. you and I and the club that you came up with, and us challenging them for their headbands, and like, yeah, I know.
That's a whole nother one. We should have you back on and talk about, you know, Fountainhead and all that kind of stuff, because that was a really
come on. I mean, come on. Those were the golden years, for God. That was fantastic. It's where I'm trying to get back to in my life, in all honesty. Because we've been apart for a while. I've had some stuff happen, and I'm trying to get back to that feeling. Yeah. And that feeling is only going to be when I have that camaraderie with other people who are passionate about martial arts.
Yeah.
And I have something in the works right now where hopefully within the next year it will be up and running.
Nice. Can you talk about that, or not yet?
I'm going to keep that on wraps for a little bit until there's a big linchpin that's going to be pretty pivotal in doing what I'm hoping. And again, I'm not looking to grow a school as big as yours. I'm 45.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to be doing something in life that I don't want to commute to a job. I hate commuting. Like, so if you're going to go be stuck in traffic, going to a job you don't love, getting paid something that you know you're worth more, like, I don't want that lifestyle. My value is not necessarily going to be monetary anymore. I am finding things at a different level than I would when I was 22 and I'd want the grind.
Yeah.
So I want to go back. I do understand that I was a pretty good instructor. I could connect with people on a lot of different levels. And I also know the actual art form to teach what needs. And so I'm going back to those things, man. I've pulled out our old handbooks and scribblings and drawings that you and I have done. And I just go through them, and it is where I find my sense of calmness, especially with what is going on in the world today.
Dude, we got to get you to come and be like a guest instructor on our live classes, our virtual class sometime.
Yeah. Once this I mean, I had it all set up, you know, pre-COVID. Like, man, I have the vacation time. I'm finally financially stable enough where I can leave for 10 days. I can spend a week
out here.
And so, like, that is my, like, number one goal is, like, I've got to get there. I've got to get there.
Or to Vermont as another idea. I just need to, I'm at 1%. So I might drop out here, but I have to reposition.
Gotcha. Well, we should probably wrap it up because we've taken a lot of your time, and I don't want to go too long or people will start getting bored. But I think that this conversation we had is really a foundational one, talking about kind of the history of Rising Phoenix martial arts. You know, Sensei Kopish, you're such a big part of that. And, you know, I actually have a ton of other things I wanted to ask you about. You know, women's self-defense. I know you know, taught a lot of women's self-defense back in the day. And I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about, you know, your falling out with Sensei Phil Sauer, although we kind of touched on that a little bit. But Trevor, is there anything else you know, think you'd want to ask Sensei Kopish before we let him go? Because we're definitely going to have you back on again. I
think he froze. I think he's done. That's his.
We'll take that as an omen that we have.
But man, yeah, I would. There's so much. One is, like, I just want to catch up first. I mean, I don't know. Do you still enjoy bourbon?
Of course.
I didn't know. So, I mean, that's one thing I want to do is, like, obviously the ultimate goal is to be in person. I just want to relive some of our glory days over some bourbons and whatnot. But yeah, there's a lot that, you know, I'd absolutely be open to, like, talking about whatever. My current job right now, just so you know, is I'm a crisis advocate at a sexual assault and domestic violence center. So there's a lot of crossover to, like, my philosophies in life and how to help populations and what martial arts is. Martial arts helped me get that job. Straight up helped me get that job. But yeah, I just feel like that. Yeah, we swirled in a bunch of places. And for people watching this, you know, I apologize. It's just, we've never really had a forum where our story's, like, really been told, and there's so much more to touch on. And oral history is a good thing, you know, so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, gosh, it was an honor having you on. It was great to catch up. I want to have you back on sometime soon. Let's think about maybe having you come and do one of my virtual classes. I think that would be really fun. And then from there, maybe he can come in person.
Let's absolutely. Let's touch base a little bit more, you know, in private messaging and whatnot. And heck, we can even just, like, Zoom ourselves. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
And we'll catch up that way.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, hey, thank you so much. It was an honor, a privilege to, you know, to be on your show. I really appreciate it. Thank you for giving me a chance to talk. I don't really get to do that often because I live by myself with a cat. So yeah, it was nice to talk to another person.
Phil Sung.
All right. Phil Sung.